last time. So
Yeah, got it.
are you all okay with that? If not, you can also close your, I was gonna say close the blind, but you know what I mean.
Maybe Janet, you should just, seeing as you've just hit record now, just briefly hit those 3 bullet points for the start of this. Yeah, and maybe
Okay.
not. I don't know.
I can do that again. So we've now hit record on this meeting, and I will repeat the 3 agenda items. The first agenda item is an invitation from Faith Climate Justice to become signatories on their joint statement. We'll review that briefly in a little bit. The second item is to explore ideas around the seed money made available to peace, justice, social concerns through a disbursement from bequests, as recommended from Facilities and Finance. And the third item is to explore the question of leadership for this peace, justice, social concerns group. All right, so on the question of the Faith Climate Justice, the organization whose banner we have at the front of the church outside is inviting us to consider being signatories on their to their joint statement. And in honesty, I had to do a little bit of digging to actually find what those statements were. It wasn't right away clear on their website. So, I mean, we have chosen to put their banner up in front of our church. So on one hand, we could say, well, we're already endorsing what they are about, but we thought it might make some sense to actually take a quick look at their statement. So I think there's 2 things that are fairly significant part of their statement. One is the Transform Waterloo Region strategy. And if I have my, I'm going to share screen and put that up. Okay, you should be able to see this, and you can explore this on your own. Maybe some of you have already, but I think the key points on this, I'll just open up this other. Oh, now it's taking down. Oh, there we go. Okay, it's downloading. There's just a couple of key points on this one document here that I think are helpful. So if you look on this sidebar under executive summary, and then there's these 6 points over here. Basically what they are saying here in Transform Waterloo, this is a community-wide response to the global climate crisis, and they have 6 things that they want to see happen in Waterloo region by 2015. And this is a call to action to transform our community. So you can see number 1, for example, is by 2050, we want most trips to be taken using active transportation with the support of a robust public transit system. And number 2 is we want to see by 2050 remaining personal and commercial vehicles are 0 emissions. And by 2050, businesses and homes no longer use fossil fuels for space heating and cooling and hot water heating. And by 2050, Waterloo region uses less, wastes less, and no longer disposes of organic matter in landfills. And by 2050, Waterloo region has a thriving local food system built on local farming and food production and processing that feeds much of our community. And finally, by 2050, Waterloo region has leveraged reducing our greenhouse gas emissions to increase equity, prosperity, and resilience for all. So that's basically what this Transform Waterloo region is about. Goals that they have set to call our local governments to action by 2050. So I'm going to stop sharing that one and then go to this other one. Give me 1 second. I'm never as quick at this as some people are, but anyway, here we go. The other one is this 50 by 30. They have these catchy slogans and whatever. So this is this is showing that our townships and cities in the region have committed to this, to these 50 by 30 goals. And if you scroll down a little bit, there's just a nice summary here about what 50 by 30 is. Campaign advocating for Waterloo Region to commit to a 50% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030, in line with the imperatives of climate science and centering social justice and well-being. So basically what that 50 by 30 is, we want us to commit to a 50% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. So I just thought I'd take a few minutes to make sure we knew what we were saying. So how do we as a group feel about our church being a signatory to those statements is the question.
What does it mean to be a signatory? Does it mean we think it's a great idea, or does it mean that we're going to make a plan to have a different furnace by 2050 and make some of those other things happen ourselves?
I think by saying we're signatories, I think we're saying this is a great idea. We want to support we want to make our voices heard in the region as supporting that. I don't think it doesn't commit us to our own goals, but those would be, certainly things to explore as a group.
Mm-hmm.
But you didn't actually show the document that we would be adding our names to. That comes from the other group, which is in support of what you just showed, but ultimately that's what we should read before we say yes or no to that.
Well, as I understood it, basically what that document said was,
like last year, that document was encouraging the cities and the townships to sign on to what you just went over, and they did. Yep. This year, the letter that there's either have sent or want to send thanks them for that, and then just gives a little bit of sort of faith-based reasons why the signators agree to that, and that's is what I understood. They want our name to be on there. Like there's a list of churches there, and we're not on it.
I understood from this statement would reaffirm our support for the Transform Waterloo Region strategy, which I just showed you, and 50 by 30 target.
Yeah.
As similar to the previous group statement to councils last spring, endorsed by local faith communities.
Yeah, there's just a little bit more meat in the letter to answer Beth's question that talks about we're going to do that in a way of equity and things like that. Like there's some other words in there, but yes, generally you're right.
I'll see if I can find what you're talking about while you're.
Yeah, I had it up before, but I've lost it again. So.
Okay, let me know if you get it, because then I can maybe get you to screen.
In your email about this meeting, it was last year's. They hadn't written this year's yet.
I know, that's what
it is there on their site.
It is now?
Yeah.
Because I think the last time I looked, it was still the same one as last year.
Yeah, when the email came, it said we'll do a similar kind of letter, but that was one frustration. They didn't actually have the letter that for this year. So
it is there, but no, I've lost it. Just
was it last?
So was that, is there intention to do this every year then? I guess we can't. We maybe don't know that, but like, why would they do it 2 years in a row?
I think last year they were just starting to get people on board, and now they're looking for more people to get on board. Okay, I think what you're talking about here, Brent, it's a page.
It's a little bit longer than last year's.
Page and a half long.
I forget what, it's just, it listed a few things at the bottom that I think is what Beth's asking. I think the short answer is there's no specific commitments, Beth. Committing to a goal, a target.
because I mean, they're great ideas to say, yeah, I think they're great ideas. And then I would say then, well, what are we going to do about that? I'm guessing that we have budget projections out for saying, the furnace is going to die in, the next 25 years. So we'll have a plan, and what will the plan be at that time? Or I don't know how it works if finance and facilities does that kind of planning or.
So yeah, it was those key reasons that I thought people should at least have read before they,
Right here.
yeah.
Okay, so as people of faith across Waterloo Region, we support Transform Waterloo Region strategy and 50 by 30 for several key reasons. A vision of the natural world as a sacred trust requires action based on respectful caretaking and partnership with the natural world, recognition of the interconnection between the health of our community and health of the local environment. 2, emphasize the principles of inclusion and equity. Meeting the needs of equity deserving groups will increase the equity, prosperity, and resilience of our communities. Faith-based perspective embraces the key intersections between climate action and social justice, calls us to care for those most vulnerable in our societies who have often done the least to contribute to climate change. 3rd, while the strategy itself includes many important and commendable actions that should be taken immediately, the recently approved near-term target of 50 by 30 better aligns the strategy with the demands of climate science, increasing momentum for bold action locally, in line with increasing momentum that is now taking place around the world. We must aspire to what science requires to secure a safe climate future and lead to building sustainable societies. Lastly, as people of faith, we recognize we are all people of the living world and creation. With our global climate system in crisis, the living world is also tragically and terribly under great threat. The crisis threatens the well-being of us all, particularly children and young people and those most vulnerable who have often done the least to cause it. These communities are on the front lines of impact, and they deserve our utmost care and support.
Right. So what I'm understanding is we're not actually committing to do anything besides perhaps advocate to local or other politicians what we think are beneficial policies.
And to support actions that are already happening. I think that last paragraph included that.
Right.
Mhm.
So I think it makes sense for us to have our name there. We've gotten the banner, and this is another way of saying that we support that action. And I imagine, or action as it happens, and those will become more concrete, I imagine, as we go along. It's my
Other thoughts from the group?
I just had a quick question on that point 2. Did it say that the most vulnerable people in our community contribute the least?
Yeah.
makes
The
sense.
least to climate change or to
Yeah.
climate problems, I think.
Yeah.
Is that's what I understood.
Oh, contribute the least.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
and I'm glad I got that clarified, because I was sitting there thinking. The
Yeah,
most
all right.
Yeah, the wording maybe wasn't the greatest.
I probably read it too quickly.
I honestly thought that it said that the most vulnerable are. Anyways. I didn't think it was very flattering to vulnerable people.
No, it means that they contribute the least to the causing the climate crisis.
Okay,
They
Not that
contribute the least and suffer the most is kind of what I
Yeah.
was getting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
glad I got that clarified.
Yeah,
Don't
I mean,
want that misinformation going around.
not to oversimplify a complicated thing, but the initiatives we talked about are really political initiatives to some
Yeah.
degree. What we're signing on to is part of this faith group that says we support those initiatives, and we support it from a faith justice climate justice views. So for those reasons, I would support putting our church's name on that.
Mhm.
And it sounds like this was well received by the local councils. Like it's supporting a direction that the councils have also committed to.
Right.
Do I have that right? And
Yeah, because all the local councils have agreed to those
yeah, that one website shows each of the local councils.
Yeah.
and
It's-
have
it's-
also, as I,
Support you in doing that, and we're behind you, right? Is that?
Right, but the initiative's not from this faith formation group or this faith group. That is a regional initiative,
Right.
but,
yeah, Transform Waterloo Region is a regional region initiative.
right,
Yeah, I
Waterloo-
think it makes
yeah.
sense to support those goals.
Any other comments?
I mean, I think maybe the best question, I mean, separate from this, you know, as a church, we need to keep thinking about particular things we might want to do that.
Yeah.
That, you know, and we've done different things over the years too, but that, you know, we need to commit to our own things and find out, you know, concretely what we can do in our own personal lives and church life, you know. It's not.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Scott, welcome.
Thank you. Sorry I'm late. I was in another meeting about Marianne Cabiosi was one of the speakers, so I couldn't miss it.
Good. We're just talking about the faith climate justice statement that we're being invited to put our signature to, and have reviewed some of that stuff and have had several people comment on it so far positively. Any other thoughts from anyone? I think I'm hearing general affirmation with the challenge also to ourselves to think about what goals we may want to set or work towards on our own individually and as a congregation. Does that reflect what we're saying?
Sounds right to me.
And we would be needing to always keep in mind that this is in the forefront to all the various ministries.
Yeah, that's another part of the question. How does that look in your own particular ministry area? Yeah.
yeah, and there are some intermediate goals by 2030 as well. So those would be, it's not like everything's out to 2050. So
Yeah, that's a good point.
and I think we talked a bit about it in other meetings before we put the banner up. I think with the banner up, most people would assume that we're members of this group already, or we're signers to it. So I think we're just affirming that or confirming that.
Mhm. All right. Any
Yeah.
last-
What, in terms of the process going forward, is it just someone emailing them to say add our name or what?
I have to go back and look at the original email to see who asked that of us and what their, yeah.
And we maybe just share this with leadership council later this week and say that we're signing this, or?
I think we should.
If I can be helpful with any of that, let me know. I was on the leadership team of Faith Climate Justice until the fall when I got the job with MCC. So I haven't been as up to speed on what they're doing in the last while. But if I can, like, I know Kai and Becky and Henriette well. So if you have any, you can, somebody else can connect with them if that makes sense. But I'm just saying that I have the connection if it's helpful.
Okay, thanks, Scott. All right. I think let's move on then to the the second item. So as you may be aware, as a church, we received 2 bequests during 2021. This was reported during our annual meeting. And recommendation from Facilities and Finance was to use one of those bequests totaled $4,308.47 for the Peace, Justice, and Social Concerns Working Group. This was affirmed by Leadership Council and then approved by the congregation when we approved our 2022 spending plan at our annual meeting. So I think the idea of the 4,000 and some dollars is to be seed money for this group to think about what might we want to do with that money. But there's also a question then of how we use that responsibly and how we have some sense of accountability for how we use it. And so those are I think two different parts of this conversation. One is simply to start to brainstorm, I think, what might be some possibilities. And we're not saying that we need to spend $4,000 this year. This is not.
Is it or is it?
This is not a line in the spending plan that will disappear if we don't spend it, nor will it reappear as $4,000 again next year if we spend the $4,000 this year. It's seed money for us to start to put some resources into action.
Janet, I wonder if it's helpful to think of it a little bit like a few years ago, there was an estate fund or donation that went to a music fund. And so we started a music fund, and that's it's not part of the spending plan. It's an ongoing fund, that our music people have had access to over the last 7 or 8 years. And some years they might spend a little bit, some years they spend more. People can donate towards that fund, like it's an ongoing fund rather than a year-to-year thing. And it's allowed some freedom for various music things to happen, from buying music stands and folders to supporting some music concerts to whatever. So it's that kind of thing, but in a whole different area.
Mm-hmm.
So I really neat idea.
Yeah, no, thanks for that clarification, Mark. That's probably helpful for understanding what it is and how it works. So I think maybe the first question is maybe more one of structure and accountability. How do we see ourselves being holders and managers of this fund in terms of how we use it and how we decide how we use it, if that makes sense. Nobody's speaking, so maybe that question didn't make any sense.
Well, I guess I would see it as it's good to know it's there. I'm not sure it should change our direction or our immediate plans in any way. I think last meeting we talked a bit about, when we talked in another meeting about the blanket exercise, it would be good to have at St. Jacobs. That probably costs some money. Then this group could decide could plan for that and cover that out of this fund. Sounds like that's going to be covered out of a different fund anyhow, so maybe a bad example, but I don't think we're looking to necessarily give this money away right away. We just want to know that if we plan on doing a workshop or we plan on driving to Ottawa with our trucks, this can pay for gas or whatever.
Oh, that's a
Might not
loaded.
be enough.
That's a loaded example.
Maybe it can't pay for gas. We had also, again, like, not necessarily a decision to make tonight, but hadn't we at one point talked about finding some money for developing the green space next to the parking lot?
We did. I think $4,000 would do very little. Like
Yeah.
that's a bigger project than what this $4,000 would do.
But
Right.
it could be set aside to do something specific for when that project gets off the ground, like paying for the plan or putting a specific structure in the finished result. That's just an idea. But
Again, I think
could.
I think the $4,000 would not go very far in terms of landscaping or structural things, or so I think we'd have to be careful that we not
limit it, don't place limits on it, I think is what you're saying, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I like Brent's, your comments about, let's see, what are some of the ideas or one of the things, some of
Yeah.
the things that we come up with, and then
Yeah.
know that there's some money available, but not now. We have this money. Let's think of how we want to spend it.
Yeah. That's
And I guess
not
as
really what
part
I
of-
was saying, but it's kind of what I was thinking.
I guess as far as accountability, until we've sort of answered a bit more of our structure, if we're going to have more structure, I'm not sure we can answer that either, other than if this has somewhat been bequested to this working group, then I guess we're saying then the working group, at least by majority, would have to
mhm.
agree on where this money goes. For now, that's probably as much as we can say.
Yeah, and we recognize,
Whether that's who shows up on a Zoom call or everybody, I don't know.
I know we don't have a closed membership, so
Right.
the question of what's 50% is is maybe one to ask. We do recognize, Brent, that this is tied to item number 3, the leadership question, and maybe we'll end up weaving these two together a little bit as we talk.
Yeah, but I think, like we talked last time about, when do we go, or do we have to go to leadership council? I mean, this at least gives us some freedom, some financial freedom, without having to go back all the time. So that's good to know, but.
Yeah.
Hi, Janet.
Yep.
Just because I need to leave a little early, I was just wondering, because I haven't actually been on a Zoom, because I missed the last one about the green space discussion. And when will that discussion be brought to a broader congregational context?
It is actually going to be named at Leadership Council later this week, right, Mark? That's what we had talked about.
Yeah, I think with the thought that is it time for Leadership Council to form some sort of ad hoc, committee that would start to think about a process of how the congregation talks about this.
And we did talk about some names last week. I think there were a couple people from this group who expressed some interest in being part of that bigger conversation. But feeling like it's not for this group, I don't think, to house that whole undertaking, whatever that becomes. Does that answer your question, Marcia?
Yeah, no, I just thought before all kinds of ideas are percolated, I think it would be a bit of a surprise to some people in the congregation to know that there are plans for the green space to rejig it into something else.
I think it came up here because there were some interesting ideas about connections with Indigenous groups, community garden, community space, all those kinds of things that can have to do with peace and justice and social.
Yeah.
So that's why it came up here. But I think our sense was that it's bigger than what can be housed in this group and needs to have more ownership from Leadership Council and beyond this group.
Yeah, no, I just thought before would really get rolling with all kinds of ideas, that the congregation is informed from the, right off the biffer, as my late mother-in-law would say, that there are people who have ideas about some ideas that could be done with the green space, just so their communication is upfront. I don't know if that.
Yeah.
What do others think?
I think that's part of what was said last time, that it,
Yeah.
that
Well, it's
it's been
part
a brainstorming idea here. In some way, it hasn't gone anywhere beyond it. Like it has to be sort of housed more properly within leadership council, and then and somehow to the congregation to know, is this even a direction to pursue, and is it like, you know, and you need a small group to start to think about how one starts a conversation with the congregation and with ideas and so forth, right? So it doesn't just, you know, take off on its own without the sense of being a broader vision. Right?
Yeah, I think the council discussion is partly a process one, as in, is it something that you even see going forward? And if there is, then who should be part of that, and how does that get communicated? But I mean, I don't think communicating to the broader congregation right now would necessarily be all that helpful, because then it'll just be, well, what are you going to do with it? Well, we don't know that. So what we're suggesting is that there should be a group, partly represented from this group, partly represented from council, and maybe other names that we talked about, that would look at it. And that should be communicated to the congregation, I suppose. But no decisions have been made, no planning has been done. There's no budget, there's none of that. We're still at that dreaming stage or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we're somewhat saying we can go much further until council at least hears about it and weighs in on that question. But I was one that was a little concerned that even taking it to council now could shut it down, and maybe it should be shut down if they want it, if they view it that way. But regardless, I think we have to ask the question and see if there's broader support for at least looking at it.
Actually, that initial conversation already started within Leadership Council a couple of years ago.
Okay.
So there is familiarity with, at least with some of the people that are still on council. That would have been then.
Yeah, so then I think the question is really just, what is the next step on it? And we think it's a broader group that looks at it further, right?
Yep.
Mhm.
So I think what I hear people saying is around this fund, that we not simply jump into trying to decide how to disperse this money, but that our ideas and plans for what we want to do next as a group should lead how we decide what to do with those resources. And that if we have some good ideas that we've generated, some things that we want to do next that need some resources, that now we have the freedom to draw on those resources. Did I hear you correctly? I think that's what I heard people saying.
And basically that the bequest and the ideas for the green space are two separate things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for clarifying that, Beth. Yeah. So I don't know that now is a time to actually brainstorm and dream about how to use our money, because I think what we're saying is we want to have concrete ideas in place about things we want to do, and then know that we have some resources to draw on.
Mhm.
So
Is there, Janet, one part in terms of, like, right now that money is sitting, I think, in the reserve fund as a place to hold it, which is often where the state funds go, you know, until they get dispersed. This fund actually sort of needs to be created. So, you know, and does it need sort of a little kind of one pager, you know, description of the fund and how it can be used and not used and who's responsible for it, like a little one-page kind of thing, just like we have for, I think there was something at one point for the music fund or something for other things. Just so that Tim can create this fund, on our books, the money can be transferred to that during this year, and that there's kind of a document of to make decisions about the money and the kind and maybe a few the kind of things it can be used for, and have a few people write something up. Would that be the next step on this money and this creating of the fund?
Yeah, I guess I didn't realize that we needed to have a, that would be helpful to see whatever was done for the music fund.
Yeah, and that's been a while. I can't quite remember. Maybe
Is that-
it was related to worship, but
Is that something that the ad hoc group could put together, or you think it needs to be put together before an ad hoc group is formed?
sorry, I thought
There wouldn't be an ad hoc group formed for this fund.
We're
Oh,
talking-
right.
the ad hoc group is from a different thing.
Yeah.
Take care, Marcia.
Thanks, Marcia. Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Maybe it's something in relation to the, this last thing of kind of, leadership of the Peace Justice group. If we identify a bit of a leadership structure, those people, get together and maybe it's a bit of consultation with Doug as finance facility chair about, just put, and Tim in terms of just a little write-up of the fund so it can exist.
Yeah, I think mainly Tim's going to want to know who can spend it and how does he know that? And we don't really have an answer for that yet, but yeah, it's good. It's a good point that it needs to be done.
And I don't think it needs to be complicated, it might just be a paragraph kind of thing, but somewhere
That would be, yeah, that sounds like a good process. So I think it makes sense to move on to the leadership question, and then this one can be their first responsibility. So we began this group last April out of lots of interest from a whole variety of people who are doing all kinds of great stuff, and thought we needed maybe a place to connect all those wonderful things that were happening. So since last April, the pastors have been facilitating these group meetings. And but I think we always had the understanding that at some point we would like to see if leadership would arise from within somehow. And so I guess, the question is, are we at that point where we are ready to do that? We do recognize that many of you are already involved in all kinds of wonderful things. So want you all to feel free to be honest about what your energy and commitment levels can be. And what could leadership look like in this group? It may not be a traditional, hierarchical structure either. There's all kinds of models for how leadership can happen. So I think it's important to have some of that conversation about what structure of leadership might look like. And I think also at this point, it'd be wonderful if there were people who were willing to say, I would be willing to do such and such as part of offering some leadership to this group. So let's open it up and see what people have to say in terms of where they think this group is at, and what kind of structure might be possible, and whether or not you have something you think you personally would be able to offer to that.
I'm happy to speak because taking on a leadership role for me, I have, without going into it all, my plate is really, really full.
Mhm.
So for many reasons, I wouldn't be able to do that, but I'm really happy to be a you know, a go-between or that contact who has relationships in our Indigenous community. I mean, I'm still very involved, and, you know, with the community food sovereignty group as well. So, and I know, Scott, you are too. So, I mean, I'm happy to fulfill any kind of role in that sense. And that's what I can bring.
Thanks, Peggy.
Yeah.
Others?
I think I can just add myself to the overflowing plate list. So I don't see myself at this moment taking on any extra leadership tasks, but would definitely find ways to be supportive of this group, and who knows about the future.
Okay, thanks, Beth.
Yeah, probably similar for me, unfortunately. I would be more in a position to help with specific things if there are things that that are happening, and that I could, that I just can't add on any more leadership stuff right now.
Thanks, Sue.
It's maybe one of the reasons I did the Life Together survey, just to see where that's at, because one of the possibilities was shutting that down. From the 42 responses, that doesn't look like that's what the congregation wants. So if I'm still on that, and the few other things I'm on, that's not leadership here, I guess, isn't on my option either. And I'll let others speak, and then I have some ideas on. I'm assuming that might be the answer for all of us here, but I should hear that from others first.
Thanks, Brent.
Yeah, I see myself more as like, I can help with things. I don't see my role as like taking on leadership, but definitely there to, yeah.
Thanks, Rachel.
So I'd like to say I would like to step up and do take on a more of a leadership role. I've never ever done anything like that though. So I would do that with help from someone, more of maybe like a co-leadership type position. Like I said, I have no experience with that, but would be interested in learning.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Megan. Thank you. That's great to hear. I'm glancing down because I'm jotting notes as we're. I'm not checking my phone or anything like that. I'm just writing notes.
It just looks like you're looking on you're at the top. It looks like you're looking down on us.
Oh,
I mean,
dear, I'm sorry.
not in that way. It's just kind of you're peering.
I'm
Just
Checking her hair.
I'm hovering, counting dandruff, and okay. Thanks, Megan. That's helpful to know, and I think we would certainly want to support you in finding whatever it is that you need to, to learn as you go along.
Okay.
I think I'm the last one to go, and I'm, if a co-leader is needed, I can be a co-leader.
cool.
All right.
But if other people hearing Megan say, I could be a co-leader, I would step aside for them.
Okay, that's helpful, Scott. Good to know.
I hear Sam downstairs, so
Okay.
I need to go.
Okay, thanks for your input, Peggy, and we won't make you head of anything in your absence.
Thank you. Okay,
Say bye to Sam.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I will. Bye.
take care. Brent, I'm aware that you had said you had some other thoughts about leadership.
That's great if that can go forward. What I was going to suggest, if we couldn't get any leadership out of this group, is that it feels like we're shrinking rather than growing in some ways, so that we should plan some sort of information session or gathering when we can to just drum up a little bit more support for it. But no, I'm quite happy if we can have some co-leadership out of this group. That's excellent. And maybe we could still do that when we can get together, but I just thought we might not find leaders out of this group at this point. But I mean, if at this stage, I think what we were talking about before, looking for is somebody to plan the meetings, chair the meetings, and sort of keep things going, right? And then there'd be hopefully other actions and
Mhm.
other things that all of us can sort of jump in on. So
Yeah.
if we got 2 co-leaders, that's great.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
And yeah, I mean, that's wonderful. Megan and Scott, and you'd be a great team. And I think part is, thinking, what's our next either meeting or helping the group figure out what's, the next very practical, concrete thing that we're doing, right? That, part of the whole vision of this group is that it doesn't become so institutionalized that it never does anything. Like that it's okay. We're bringing food here. We're meeting this person. We're connecting with this community activity. Whatever.
Kairos, blanket exercise.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what I was gonna say. We have the Kairos blanket
And that's a
exercise
very concrete thing coming
scheduled
up.
and planned, and that may be kind of the next thing that this group initiates, promotes, supports,
And in a sense, is a sponsor of or like that.
sponsors, leads the, I
Welcome.
mean, we don't lead it ourselves, but introduce the leaders and so forth. Yeah.
And that's in May, right?
May 14th, Saturday.
It's
Yeah.
the weekend you have your big thing, Scott.
Yeah.
Yeah. I won't be there for that, but that's good. I'm glad that's happening, even if I can't be there.
I think something we mentioned maybe at the very first meeting was education about different issues, and we could maybe think about things that, we used to do things like brown bag lunches and Sunday nights at church, but our Zoom Sunday evenings have been really successful. Maybe a series around issues that were presented like that might be something to consider.
Mhm.
The other part in terms of, like, I don't think we're saying as pastors we disappear from this conversation
No.
either, right? Like,
No.
the support and maybe it's Megan and Scott meeting with one of the pastors to help plan the next meeting, right?
Yeah.
But the 2 of you taking more of the lead in terms of leading that meeting, we're a bit more in the background as pastors, and can help facilitate those communication pieces and getting things in the newsletters and that right but that just would be really helpful to have.
Mhm. That'd be great. Scott or Megan, did you want to say anything about anything more about what you see as a role in the leadership role? I don't want to put you on the spot. If you have nothing more, that's fine.
I'm seeing a rigid hierarchy where Megan has absolute authority and I'm her willing henchman. That's how I envision this.
That sounds very entertaining.
I changed my mind. I want to be co-chair with Scott.
I have nothing to add. Like I said, like I'm kind of just jumping in with both feet and just hoping that I kind of learn on the go. So I really don't have anything to add at this point. I'm kind of still wrapping my head around about what I just offered myself to do here. So
That's just so cool.
Yeah. Yeah,
And,
that's
and Devin didn't have to ask you to do it.
right.
oh, there's been little nudges in the background.
Ah, okay.
Uh,
Right. Oh, that's
well,
wonderful, Megan.
the pastoral team is a great support. I can say that from experience.
Mhm. Yeah. Any other comments from the group about how they see leadership working? I guess Scott and Megan are just in for life.
I'll say we just give this a try and get started and see how
Yeah.
it goes.
Yeah.
I don't think this is the one that has to sort of, in the starting sort of, okay, now it's sort of a formal, 3-year term that can be renewed. It's like
Yeah,
I think at this point, this is an ad hoc kind of group to start. And
See where it
I-
goes.
You gotta be careful with those. I've been on Grace Slough for 27 years, I think.
there are dangers there, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ian only had one way out of it.
Yeah.
Oh.
No, I think we as pastors would want to be in close communication with Megan and Scott to see how it's feeling, how it's going, what would be appreciated in terms of support and resources and checking in, to make sure that you're still feeling good with that and so forth. I mean, Brent, your comment about feels like we're shrinking a little bit. I am struck by that the last 2 meetings. I'm not sure what that says. I think we have a wider group that can be drawn on.
Yeah.
Scott.
It could be that the agenda had in about leadership, so.
People stayed away.
well, and I'm just aware that a few people that I'm thinking of have had a lot on their
Yes.
plate happening that I think has influenced some of that.
Fair enough. I guess I'm thinking about some of the younger folks that came out
Yeah.
to the first meeting or two, and hopefully we can still find ways to draw some of those folks in, maybe particularly with specific invites to the Kairos blanket exercise. Some shoulder tapping that way.
Yeah, I think the neat thing about that was it showed us who had general interest in this area. And even if they're not showing up for every meeting, as you say, the broader group gives you ideas of people that you could go to and suggest, for particular specific things.
Task. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember one of the young adults saying that, if there's something there to get involved in, something specific, that they'll be there if they're able to be. So I think, yeah.
All right, well, I think maybe then what we would say is as pastors, somebody from the pastoral team will pick this up with Megan and with Scott and to initiate another whatever comes next for this group, as well as picking up the piece about framing, as Mark was suggesting, a bit of a mandate for what the fund is and how it gets used. Does that seem reasonable?
That's the same meeting I was at. Always good to know.
I'm just giggling. I've never heard it quite said that way before. I like that.
And some probably is a little bit of concrete planning that needs to go into the May 14th
Yeah.
Kairos
Yeah.
blanket exercise in terms of creating congregational interest for that and putting that out there. And there may be some logistic things around food and times and whatever, right?
Yeah, let's hope the pandemic is subsided, continues to subside until, so we can have that without glitches.
Just note, I think there was a limit on the number of people. So we'd have to make,
Yeah, we'd have to have a sign up. Yeah.
But my memory, it was somewhere in the 40-ish, 50.
I was thinking 30, but
I was thinking 30 as well, but Kevin has that contact information, I think. Yeah, and Kevin sent his regrets. He was hoping to be here tonight, but had some other things that needed to be prioritized, so.
all right.
All right,
But
well,
that's still a pretty sizable group to get from one congregation. So I think.
Yeah.
Scott, you just raised was the food sovereignty collective idea. We didn't have it on the agenda tonight because we've thought we had these 3 more significant structural items, but if there's something you wanted to update us on or share, I think that's totally fine.
Okay, we'll see how well the Zoom filtering out the.
Background music,
It's
lovely.
very background, Ashley.
You can still hear me.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, no, we don't have to decide tonight, but so the Indigenous Food Sovereignty Collective, I think Peggy has more connections with them. I've been in touch with Heather like a couple times over the last 6 months, and she's another member of the collective. And so what I had been talking to Heather about kind of on and off was, is there a possibility for some connections between this Food Sovereignty Collective and St. Jacobs, particularly around the industrial kitchen, and the possibility of using that on a pretty like, it wouldn't be like every week. It would be like once a season, do some canning in our kitchen, was the sort of idea that I had spoken about with Heather. And so I said that I'd bring that to this group and just see what you think about that idea, and then if there's interest, or sort of if this group thinks, yeah, that's something to pursue, then I would love to hear your. So that's the first part, and then if we get to that stage, then what would be your thoughts on who to talk to next about that within St. Jacobs?
Thanks for raising that, Scott.
And I think we talked about that a little bit at our last meeting, right? That idea was, there was a lot of excitement in this group about something like that. That one does together in some way. Right?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that was my recollection too, is that as long as it was sort of an event-based idea as opposed to a regular weekly or monthly. But yeah, I think there was a lot of support for that. And I think it may have been, I don't think it was just me. I think it was raised with Brenda Poole and Andrea a little bit, and they're not sure it's their call either, being on social committee, but it's been done before a couple of different ways, right? So it's wouldn't be unusual. I'm not sure, unless pastors know that, what the actual logistics would be to get approval for a date or something like that. But
I think it's almost as much as, booking a date with Pauline in the office, that like Peace Justice Group wants to host the sovereignty thing on May 19th or September, maybe more the end of the season when there's food, end of August or September or whatever, and you book a Saturday or whatever. Right?
and Scott, they're open to others being involved with that, or like they're not just coming in and renting the kitchen, or is that more what they want to do?
We haven't talked about the specific details, but
Okay.
I seem to have the sense that they were like, it wasn't like we're using this now, all of you people from St. Jacobs steer clear. Like I feel like there there was a desire for some relationship building there as well.
Yeah, I think that's what we talked about last time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that would be great.
Oh yeah, and I think what happened was, yeah, since that, this is kind of coming back to me now. And so Heather was going to meet, they had a meeting, I think it might've been a couple weeks ago. So I'll email her tomorrow then, or whenever, like probably tomorrow, and just say there's interest and what dates are you thinking about, and then connect with Colleen in the office about that. Okay, great. Thanks.
And did you want to also talk about, who else from SJMC might we think of who might in some way be connected to this or interested in this? I mean, Brent, you mentioned Brenda and Andrea, both from the social committee. I don't think we're saying they would have to be, but if they would have interest, they could certainly be part of it.
Peggy might.
Peggy?
I would have an interest.
I would have an interest.
Mhm.
I suspect you put that out as a date and there'd be a number of people that would.
Mhm. It might be a way to hook in one of these young adults too that has expressed some interest.
Yeah, and we, like I say, Heather and I haven't had a chance to talk about this specifically, but I know one of the potential issues was transportation. So it might be another, like there might be volunteer drivers or something, like somebody wants to can, but they don't have a way to get to St. Jacobs easily.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
somebody could swing by and pick them up or something.
Yeah, depending on the dates, I'd be interested in doing something like that.
Yeah. I'd be curious too to know what it is that, what's the bulk of what it is that they're growing? What would we be, is this tomatoes or is this, squash or beans or whatever? Yeah, like what is it that's
Being preserved.
being preserved? Fish.
Yeah, I don't know.
Do they have all the supplies and stuff, or do they need that sort of thing?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I don't know.
That
Jars.
was
and
my other
tins.
wondering too, whether that's where we could use a bit of the money,
Mhm.
and get
Yeah,
some supplies if needed. Depends,
If
depends. Go.
supplies are needed though, like if it's cans and stuff like that, that's the sort of thing you actually should have bought yesterday. Like they're saying there's gonna be a run on canning supplies again this year. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's the
Yeah.
sort of thing to be proactive on.
Lids and-
I have my lid connections. I know the Mennonite stores to go to for the lids.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's some Mennonite.
That is something to know. Is that something that, because come September, August, September, you don't want to be looking for lids.
yeah.
Correct. And it may not,
Jars you could probably put out to the congregation and there might be people that would be like. Well, I have.
or it may also be other methods of preserving. It might not just be canning. It might be other freezing or, I don't know,
Well, dehydrating or.
dehydrating.
We have it all. Like, I mean, that's why I'm saying, we have a pressure canner, we have a dehydrator. we have it all.
yeah,
And I think at some point, social committee does need to be involved. Like you're gonna need somebody there that knows the kitchen, the St.
Yeah.
Jacobs kitchen.
That's true.
And
yeah.
maybe it's one of the people that we just named, that's fine. It doesn't have to be Andrea or Brenda, but there does have to be sort of a key holder or whatever, just to to find things. Most things are labeled, but
Yeah,
Just
no, that's a good point.
certain
Well-
procedures that have to be followed and that. so.
Yeah, and the oven and the pilots and all that stuff, those are unique things that, yeah.
But no, if you can get a date and a bit more information, it wouldn't take much more after that, hopefully.
Yeah. Does that give you enough to go on, Scott? So asking more, maybe specifically more about dates that they would be thinking of, what kinds of things they're preserving and how, and what sort of supplies might be needed.
Transportation.
And then transportation, we can figure out as well.
yeah.
And even like how many people involved, like if there's 3 people from you know that are coming and 27 people from St. Jacobs, that may not feel right.
You don't want that many people in the kitchen anyway.
Not many people in the kitchen, right? Like there may be some.
Yep.
Like you want sort of a balanced kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think our last meeting we compared it a bit to. I mean, there was some canning things that happened when we first got the kitchen that were really neat within St. Jacobs itself, and some folks that sort of in a sense came to St. Jacobs Mennonite through that. There was some neat stories around that, but also a few times where we've done a making a meal together with Grace Lau and St. Jacobs folk, and kind of half and half of people, and how fun that was. As a community building kind of thing. So just to be aware of some of those dynamics, right? Of having somewhat equal amount of people. And
Yeah.
Space in the kitchen.
All right, anything else from anyone? Appreciate everyone's time and energy and enthusiasm and input tonight. I feel good about where we've arrived and where we will potentially go in the future. So thank you all for participating. Why don't we close with a time of prayer? God, we thank you for the energy and movement of your Spirit. We thank you for the way that things have unfolded during this meeting tonight with volunteer leadership stepping forward, and we just thank you for those folks who are willing to offer some leadership here. We pray that they will find and be provided with the support they need. Help us to find ways to be supportive and encouraging and helpful in whatever ways we can be. We also pray for the ongoing learning and initiatives that this group has in mind, and pray that you will bless those initiatives, bless our energy, and help us to find ways to continue to be messengers of peace and justice and social equality in our communities. Thank you for being present with us tonight as we discerned together, and bless us as we go forward as a group. Pray this in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for the leadership that you have given, Janet, and other pastors.
You are most welcome. And I am going to stop recording. Call this the end of our